you very much for your introduction. So I'll be presenting this work uh, from ECCV that was done with the collaboration of John Hopkins and a few other institutes. So the main goal of this work is to face edit with the language driven ideas. So basically what we want to do is to be able to edit any face in 3D by language based prompts. So for instance, if you want a face to a sad face to have a smile, you can sort of with text say what sort of smile you want, and this then can be then done. This sort of editing can be then done. Right. So I'll present this work in these three different ways. So first, I'll start with the a short backstory of our method. Then I'll present what we have proposed, and finally, I'll end with some interesting results. So let's start. So I think one model that's familiar to most of us is the GAN model. But one issue with the GAN model is that it maps a random latent space to an output. And one of the major problems that was solved by style GAN was how to find, how to disentangle this latent space. So we can sort of divide this latent space into linear factors, then that then can be manipulated to generate different types of outputs. So this is the first piece of puzzle for our work. The second part is how to actually edit an image. So the GAN can just map a random latent space to an image, but to able to edit it, first we need to represent that image in the latent space of the GAN. So the way we do it is we pose it as a optimization problem. And what we are trying to do is we're trying to find, for instance, this input image, we are trying to find its latent representation in the latent space of a GAN. And we do it by this sort of minimization problem where we start with a random point in this latent space, we generate that image through that space, and then we just minimize the distance between the random point and the original image, and then this way we find the latent representation of that image in the GAN space. So that's finding the latent representation. But then another question is how to actually edit it. And by edit, what we mean is that we want to keep the most of the attributes of the input image, but we want to make certain directed changes. So for instance, we want to keep the overall structure of an image, but we just want to have it a smile or makeup or different hair or anything of that sort. For that, what we do is we find an editing direction in the latent space of the GAN. So GAN has this ability to sort of, this has a continuous space in the GAN's latent space is continuous. So if you move in this latent space, you can actually find different variations of the same images. And what we need is to find that editing direction that corresponds to what we want to edit in the input image. And again, this is also often done with this sort of optimization problem where we start with the random editing direction and then we somehow use a feedback mechanism to find this editing direction. So the feedback mechanism that's usually used is some sort of attribute classifier, right? So it's the feedback needs to be that we have an image, GAN generates an image, and then that image needs to be looked at, and then that feedback needs to be propagated back to this learned editing direction, right? So for that we use a attribute classifier that just can specify whether an image is young. For instance, if we're just trying to make someone younger, then we can train a classifier that can tell us how young an image looks, and then we can use that feedback to solve this optimization problem. And it but the attribute classifiers are difficult to get by because you need to have the training data and you have to train a model, and then you only have one fixed attribute classifier for one attribute. So what we can do is we can also use a clip like vision language model, where we can use the feedback of this vision language model to find this editing direction. But again, the main idea here is to find this editing direction in the latent space of the GAN. Okay, so this is the first part of the story, and this was restricted to the normal 2D GANs. So the second part of the story is this journey from 2D GANs to 3D GANs. And usually the way we do it is to enable, in order to convert a 2D GAN to 3D, being 3D aware, we add something called alpha maps in it that generates different sort of poses of the input image, and then we use existing renderers that can take these two generated outputs and then render a image at a certain camera pose. So this way we can sort of create a 3D image of a face, right? So what this GAN could do is, given a W and a camera pose, it will create the image at that specific camera pose. And again, in the 3D GAN, the way we find DW is with the attribute classifier. The same story, we use it as a sort of feedback and then propagate that feedback back to the DW and find that editing direction. But the problem in the 3D GAN space is that, as I mentioned, attribute classifiers are expensive to train. They are very difficult to specially train for novel attributes, and you have to train a new classifier for every new attribute, and they are usually not flexible even for very sort of small changes. So for instance, if you want to go from red to green here, you have to train and do the whole pipeline again. So we are basically trying to solve this problem to have a language driven face editing in the 3D GAN space. So the way our method works was that we took a 3D GAN and we added a language aided editor in this in the input space of this style in the 3D GAN. So the way it works is that it takes a prompt, textual prompts, and then find the find the editing direction in the latent space of the 3D GAN. And for that we used a clip-based language encoder, and then we also used two things. For each new editing direction or each new editing style, we use one learnable prompter and one sort of mapper that can map this textual prompt into the latent space of the 3D GAN. So basically, we find we encode input text to input text with this clip model. We find the find its equivalent in the latent direction, latent space of the GAN, and then we create the 3D, generate the 3D images, the edited 3D images. So the second part of this method is doing this efficiently, and this is achieved by just training the style tokens and style mappers. And in order to train these style tokens and style mappers, we introduced these. First, we used directional loss. This is from another work, and then we also used 3D identity preservation. I'll just go skim through it, and pose preservation loss. So these are there to make sure that the pose and the identity of the generated image is kept intact. So let's have see a few results. So these are some comparisons with the existing work. So you can see that it produces good results with any new arbitrary language prompt, and you can have different angles, different emojis, different sort of makeups and stuff like that. Anything you can define with the text. This is sort of a 3D image, and finally I'll just go through one last thing. So one interesting result is that the clips limitations are also transferable to our method. So for instance, if we look for blue eyes, the GAN also makes it more brighter. So that's one interesting observation, and I'll for now I'll just skim through it. Thank you very much.
That's a nice presentation. Just wanted to ask if adaptive instance normalization can help in localized face editing in this approach.
I think instance normalization was the first method that was used for stylized generation, right?
Yeah, it is
Stylized
in
image
style
generation.
GANs. Yeah.
And style GAN is basically a sort of continuation of that
Yeah.
that work, right? So it's part very much part of the style GAN, right? So I think it definitely does help.
Okay. That's all.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let's thank the